Welcome to English 9 Week 2, Expressing Permission, Obligation, and Prohibition Using Modals. I am Mr. Nelpon Pisambalod and I am your teacher for this subject. What students need to know. Last session, you were able to identify the basic definition of modals, functions of modals, and how to use modals in sentences. This time, the lesson focuses on different kinds of modals. This also deals with the different grammatical forms of modals as used in expressing permission, obligation, and prohibition. You are expected to identify the modals used in an article, differentiate the different kinds of modals used in expressing permission, obligation, and prohibition, create dialogues using modals, and convert nonlinear to linear information. Let us not prolong your learning about modals. Let's proceed to learning task 1. Imagine that you are in a new school. Match the signage below with their corresponding meaning. Write your answers in your notebook. Of course, you deal it with your Google form links. So what are the signages? We have number 1, unauthorized person is not allowed here. Next, smoking is not allowed here. You must not litter here. You must not drink here. You cannot eat here. Do not enter. And you can pitch in here. Let us officially deal with learning task 1. So we have here the signages, the images for the signages. Then let's match them with the given sentences. So I'll just pick 5. So first, number 1. So you have your cigarette and slash. Do not smoke here. You can't smoke here. Number 3. You can't eat here or do not eat here. Number 5, you have there the circle with a horizontal line inside of it. That is the do not enter. You can't enter. The number 7, we have here the please do recycle or the recycling. You can recycle. You can throw recyclable things here like that. The number 9, we have number 9, you can pitch in here or you can throw trash in here. So, what's common in the given sentences for the following images? That's the question. Okay, so think about it. You have the idea. They all have modals in them. So, let's proceed. Let's jump to learning task 2. Choose the modal that best completes each statement. Write the letters of your answers in your notebook. Of course, deal again with your Google Forms. So number 1, there's a lot of distractions coming from passing vehicles. Blank, Lena close the door. Is it A, must Lena close the door? B, could Lena close the door? C, would Lena close the door? D, can Lena close the door? So what's the correct answer? You got it correct. It's letter A. Must Lena close the door? Okay, number 2. Karen Blank start investing now if she wants to retire soon. Is it A? Karen can start investing now? B. May start investing? C. Would start investing? D. Have to start investing or has to start because that's Karen, singular. So what's the correct answer? It's letter D. Karen has to start investing now if she wants to retire soon. Okay? The Karen can start investing now if she wants to retire soon sounds correct. But actually, of course, you must know the meaning of the modal verb that we are going to use. Okay, so later on, as we have a review about the modal verbs, then you will finally realize why it's not can but has to. Okay, number 3. Stanley Blank come to the session, but his presence would lighten the mood if he's there. So is it A, couldn't, B, can't, C, must not, mustn't, D, don't have to? So the answer is letter D. Stanley doesn't have to come to the session, but his presence would lighten the mood if he's there. Of course, no, let's always observe the number of the subject and the number of the verb, okay? So let's proceed. Number 4, Serena can't get a connection on her gadget. Blank, she borrow yours? Is it have to borrow? Have to she borrow yours? May she borrow yours? Can she borrow yours or would she borrow yours? So which is the correct answer? It can't be the have to she borrow yours because remember in English, if it doesn't sound good as you play it by the ears, meaning to say there's something wrong with the grammar. So what's the correct answer? It's letter C. Can she borrow yours? Okay, let's have number five. It's a controlled room. Unauthorized persons blank come inside. Is it don't have to come inside? Can't come inside? Wouldn't come inside? Couldn't come inside? So what's the correct answer? It's letter C. Can't come inside. Okay, let's continue with numbers 6 to 10. Before we continue answering numbers 6 to 10, please be reminded that choosing the best modals in sentences has something to do with sentences context. You must always consider the context of the sentence. Does the sentence expresses prohibition, permission, obligation? Okay, so where does the sentence lead you? So that you can decide what modal you will be putting in the sentence. Okay, because you know already, you have learned it from our previous session that modals can express prohibition, permission, and obligation. So you must be able to pick the best modal that communicates that certain idea. Okay, so let's have number six. Jason Blank be at the airport at least 2 hours before his flight. Is it has to be, can be, maybe, would be. So the correct answer is has to be. Jason has to be at the airport at least 2 hours before his flight. It communicates what? The the so-called obligation. It is Jason's obligation to be at the airport 2 hours before his flight because if not, then he can no longer ride the plane. Okay? Can no longer board in. Okay, number seven. The invitation says that you blank only bring two guests with you to the wedding. So is it have to only bring, can only bring, may only bring, could only bring? So what is the correct answer? It's letter B, can only bring. So what is the idea or what's the thought being conveyed by can? It is the permission that what? That person being invited can only bring two guests with him or her. Okay? The number three. Ethan blank stay overtime in the office today rather than going and working in the office this weekend. Is it A, must stay, B, have to, C, could stay, or D, would stay? The correct answer is letter A. The modal must. Ethan must stay overtime in the office today. So what's the idea communicated? It's the idea of what? Obligation, as if it's an obligation for Ethan to stay overtime in the office that day. Okay? Number nine, I believe I blank finish this task before the deadline. Is it may finish, I may finish, would finish, could finish, or have to finish? I believe that I have to finish the the task before the deadline. That is letter D, have to. Again, it expresses what? Is it obligation, permission, prohibition? So that is obligation, the have to. Okay, number 10. Considering the event's formality, the winners blank wear their formal attire for for the awarding. Is it A, could, B, must, C, can, D, would? So the correct answer is must wear. So that is what? That expresses the idea of obligation. Okay, let's continue. The winners must wear their formal attire for the awarding. Okay, let's proceed. Let us have learning task 3. Read the infographics below from the World Health Organization, WHO, or WHO. Identify the models used in each picture and use them in your own sentence. Write your answers in your Google form link. Let's have the infographics. Should I avoid shaking hands because of the new coronavirus? Yes, respiratory viruses can be passed by shaking hands and touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Greet people with a wave, a nod, or a bow instead. So, what are the models in the infographics? So, you have the should, can, should, and can. Okay, let's continue. Let's proceed reading the content of the World Health Organization infographics about coronavirus, how it can be transmitted. Is wearing rubber gloves while out in public effective in preventing the new corona infection? No. Regular washing your bare hands offers more protection against catching COVID-19 than wearing rubber gloves. You can still pick up COVID-19 contamination on rubber gloves. If you then touch your face, the contamination goes from your glove to your face and can infect you. How can I grocery shop safely in the time of COVID-19? When grocery shopping, keep at least 1 meter distance from others and avoid touching your eyes, mouth, and nose. If possible, sanitize and handles of shopping trolleys or baskets before shopping. Once home, wash your hand thoroughly and also after handling and storing your purchased products. There is currently no confirmed case of COVID-19 transmitted through food or food packaging. Now let us pick out the modals used in the sentences in the infographics. So we have the first one. You have the can again. Is it? You can still pick up COVID-19. Okay, the can there. Next is what? Can again. The can infect. Okay. So can, okay, what else? So the thing here, after you pick out all the modal verbs in the sentences in the infographics, then you write your own sentences. And do not forget to use those modal verbs. Okay. Before dealing with the remaining learning tasks for this module, let's have a quick review on what are modals. Modals are auxiliary or helping verbs. They may be used in expressing permission, obligation, and prohibition. But as what you have learned from our last week's session, modals do express a lot of thoughts or ideas in sentences. They are not just limit on expressing permission, obligation, and prohibition. So how are you going to pinpoint the idea being communicated by a certain modal, of course, always deal with the context of the given sentence or of the sentence. So let's proceed. Examples of sentences using modals. I believe I can fly. You have there the modal can, which expresses a strong belief. And the next sentence, Cuddly must call the police after the incident. Janine has to prepare for her exams. So the Cuddly must call the police after the incident. You have there the must call. So the modal there is the must, is it? Modal is the helping verb, then the call is the main verb. So master expresses what? An obligation for Cuddly to call the police. Then in the next sentence, Janine has to prepare for her exams. You have there the has to. That that conveys what? Obligation for Janine to prepare for her exams. Then the last sentence is Bernadette doesn't have to secure a permit for her to go out of her house. You have here the doesn't have to. So later on, we will find out what does it mean. Okay? What idea does it communicate? Let's continue. How can we say that a modal expresses permission? Permission is an act of giving consent or authorization. In stating permission, modals to be used include can, could, and may. So, meaning to say, whenever you see those modals in sentences, you have there already the idea that the sentences convey the idea of permission. You have there the authorization or consent in the sentences. Okay? So, let's have the modal can. Can is used to ask for and give permission. Again, can is used to ask for and give permission. Look at the examples. Can you give me your number? Can you help me with this? I can do it if you want me to. So the first two examples are expressing what? Are expressing or asking for permission. Can you give me your number? Can you help me with this? Well, the last one, I can do it. I can do it if you want me to. You have the what? The other function of the modal can, which is to express the ability. Can, the modal can expresses also ability to do, just like what you have learned from our lesson the last time. Okay? We are still on elaborating the modals that express permission. Now let's have the modal could. Could is also used as a more polite and more formal modal in asking permission, which may not be given. Examples. I could possibly ask my mom to cook it for us. Could I interview the mayor? Could you lend me your book? Okay, so again, could is also used as a more polite and more formal modal in asking permission, which may not be given. So you can ask it, but there's no certainty that it will be granted to you, whatever you ask for. So again, you're asking permission to do something. Okay? Just like the example, could I interview the mayor? You're asking for an interview with the mayor. So it depends whether the mayor is available or not. Could you lend me your book? It depends again. That's why which may not be given. But still, you're asking for permission. That's the context of the sentence, or that's the content of the sentence itself. Asking for permission. That's why the modal verb could is under modals that ask permission, that communicate the idea of asking or what? Expressing permission. Okay? I could possibly ask my mom to cook it for us. Could. That's why more polite and more formal. Okay. Now let's have the third modals that do express permission. We have now the modal may. May is the most polite and formal modal used in asking and giving permission. Examples. Medical practitioners affected by COVID-19 may now claim their financial support from the government. Teachers may now distribute the modules to the learners. May I borrow your book, please? Okay, so you have there the modal verb may, which also communicates the idea of what? Of giving permission. So medical practitioners affected by COVID-19 may now claim, so permitted already. Teachers may now distribute the modules. May I borrow your book, please? Most polite. Is it? The most polite modal may. Now asking for permission also. Okay, I hope you understand this slide dealing with the modals could and may. Again, the modals that express permission are can, could, and may. When are we going to know that we are already dealing with modals that express prohibitions? So let's find out what is prohibition. Prohibition is the act of disallowing or prohibiting someone in performing or doing something. Modals showing prohibitions include can't and must not or mustn't. So meaning to say, whenever you see in sentences the modal verbs can't and must not or mustn't, then you are being given already the idea that the action you are supposed to do is not allowed, or there's an action that is not allowed to be do so because you have there the prohibition, or it is being prohibited. So prohibition from the word itself, prohibit, you are being disallowed to do something or perform something. Okay, let's now deal with the modal verb can't. Can't is used in dealing with something against rules, laws, and signs. This is used when the speaker is not the one who sets the rules. Examples. You can't go out during the community quarantine. It's a quarantine policy. The company can't apply for promotion for reconsideration, legal proceeding. You can't buy any alcoholic beverages due to liquor ban policy. So it's not the speaker who really imposed the rule, but it's just being what? Being echoed by the speaker to you that there's an existing rule or law dealing with that action that you want to do. So you are being reminded that your action to be made is not allowed because rules there's existing rules, laws, and signs that are prohibiting you to do the said action that you want to execute. Okay? But again, it's not the one who tells you who imposes it, but instead there is an existing rule or law about it, and you're just being reminded of it. That's why, as you hear that, then you know that you are not allowed to do that action that you are wanting to go with or to do with. Okay? So I hope it's clear. So that's the first modal verb that expresses prohibition. Again, it's the modal verb can't. Let's have the second verb that expresses prohibition. We have the verb must not or mustn't. It is used in dealing with something that is not permitted. In this context, it is the speaker who sets the rules. So if the modal verb can't is not set by the speaker himself or herself, or there's an existing rule or law dealing with the prohibited action, this one, it is the speaker who is setting it or who sets the rules. Examples: you must not turn off your camera during online class, teacher student. Okay? You must not turn off your camera during online class. So as the teacher or being the teacher who's saying it, I'm the one who imposes the rule. It's not what? According to Republic Act like this and like that, you can't turn off your camera. Oh, there's no such, is it? Nah. So that's why I use must. You must not turn off your camera during online class. Teacher, student. The mustn't. Mustn't you eat the fruits inside the fridge? Mustn't you eat the fruits inside the fridge? Mother to child. Okay? Mustn't you eat the fruits inside the fridge? So the rule is set by the mother. Then Salome must not tell my secrets to her friends. Boss to a colleague. Okay? So again, we use the must or mustn't whenever the action that we want to prohibit is what? Is against the rule being imposed by the speaker himself or herself. Okay? If you are the one who's going to tell your classmate, you must not copy my answer. Okay? So meaning to say, it's you who is imposing or prohibiting your classmate to copy your answer. But if we are going to say, you can't. You can't copy my answer according to the student's handbook, resolution number, like that. Is it? Okay. So again, we use the must not or mustn't as modal expressing prohibition if you're dealing with something that is not permitted, and it is the speaker who sets the rules. Okay, so again, that's the modal verb must not or mustn't. Now that we are in the seventh month of COVID-19 pandemic, I do believe that there are many tasks or household chores that are assigned to you. And these household chores must be accomplished by you, or else your guardians, parents, mother, or father will really get angry. So you already impose to yourselves that these tasks are obligations. So talking about obligations, we do have modal verbs that express obligation. So, how are we going to find out that the sentence using a modal verb is already expressing obligation? So, obligation expresses commitment or duty. Modals used in expressing obligations include have to, has to, and must. Okay? Again, the modal verbs expressing obligations are have to, plural, has to singular, and must. So must also a while ago is a modal verb under modals expressing prohibition. Okay? If you can remember it. So, as what I keep on saying, you must always sense the context of the sentence for you to figure out if the sentence is expressing prohibition or obligation. So, is the modal verb expressing prohibition or obligation? Okay? Let's have the has or have to. It's used when obligation comes not from the speaker. The obligation is set by an authority, rule, or law. Look at the examples. I have to be in the airport before the flight departure. She has to submit her report on time. The company has to pay retrenchment benefits to its employees. So look at the given example sentences again. So the first one, I have to be in the airport before the flight departure. So it is an obligation for that person to be in the airport because that is a rule or law, a rule actually of an airline. Because as what I've said earlier, you can no longer board the plane if you are late on your arrival in the airport. Okay? So there's an existing rule or law coming from an authority or institution, is it? Okay. The next one, she has to submit her report on time. So it's a what? It's a sentence expressing that what? That that girl has to submit the report on time because there's someone who imposed that to her. There's an authority who ordered her to submit the report on time. It can be the boss of that girl. That's why the girl is obliged to submit the report on time. Then the third one, the company has to pay retrenchment benefits to its employees. Has to pay because that is what an order coming from the Department of Labor and Employment. Because if the company will not do so, then they will be charged by the dole. Is it? So again, whenever we use the has or have to in sentences and they express obligation, so the obligation is imposed by an authority or a rule or a law. It's not the speaker who sets the obligation to himself or herself, the speaker or but instead the speaker rather uh yeah the speaker himself or herself is just being ordered to do something, is obliged to do something. Okay? So that's the modal verb has or have to. Then let's have the must. Must is used when expressing obligation comes from the speaker or from an authority. So from speaker or an authority. Let us see the examples. I must call my husband now. So it is imposed by the speaker herself. Must. You have there the must call. So the modal verb must, then the main verb call. So I must call my husband now. Who imposes the obligation to call her husband? No other than her. Okay? The next example. We must finish the report on time. I must stay away from them. We must finish the report on time. I must stay away from them. So there's an authority, is it? There's an authority asking them to finish the report on time. Now, which one is the must that is coming from the speaker himself or herself? The I must stay away from them. Na, the I must stay away from them is an obligation imposed by the speaker himself or herself uh, to himself, not to herself, for him or her to finish the report on time because there's an authority asking him or her to finish or them rather to finish the report. So he or she must impose an obligation to himself herself. Okay, so that would be all for modal verbs expressing obligation. And again, modal verbs expressing obligation are has to, have to, and must. Okay. If we do have modal verbs expressing obligation, we also have modal verbs that express no obligation. So, how are we going to say that the modal is expressing no obligation? No obligation expresses the absence of commitment or duty, as one may do it or not. Don't, doesn't, have to is used to express no obligation. Don't have to, doesn't have to. So, when are we going to use the don't have to? Whenever the subject is plural, they don't have to. Then doesn't have to, he doesn't have to, she doesn't have to. Okay? So again, whenever you see in sentences those modal verbs, the don't have to, the doesn't have to, they do express no obligation. So examples. She doesn't have to attend the funeral if she is not feeling well. So she doesn't have to attend the funeral if she is not feeling well. So it's okay if that girl will not be attending the funeral. It's not her obligation. Okay? You don't have to come to my office in person. You may submit it online. So it's a choice. So there's no obligation for that applicant to submit her application on in person, but instead it can be submitted online. You don't have to come to my office in person. You may submit it online, whether it is what an application or a report that must be submitted. Okay? So again, no obligation. That's why don't have to. Don't have to. Then the third one is actually the third one and the last. The employees don't have to come this morning as the activity will start in the afternoon. Okay? So the context itself of the sentence, of course, you will not go there. Why go there in the morning whenever wherein the event will be in the afternoon? But again, as you go on with the content of it, employees don't have to come to the field to their workplace because activity will begin in the afternoon. So it's their choice whether they will go there in the morning or they will go there in the afternoon. Okay? So again, the model that expresses no obligation, we have the don't have to and the doesn't have to. So thank you for listening. Let's continue. After learning what are modals expressing permission, prohibition, obligation, and no obligation, now let us check your learning. Let's proceed to learning task 4. Copy and complete in your notebook the dialogue by supplying phrases or modals plus verb expressing permission, obligation, or prohibition, whichever is necessary. So as you proceed with this learning task, you are about to supply the needed verb phrases in the sentences in a paragraph wherein you will be completing the said paragraph having sentences that have their blanks for you to fill the verb phrases. So it's for you to decide what modal verb you will be using and what verb will complete the sentence. Of course, you deal again with the context of the sentence. What is in the sentence? What is the thought of the sentence? Okay? So that will be in the next slide. Let's now have the paragraph with dialogues that you need to deal with. Once upon a pandemic, there is no perfect time and age to becoming responsible and well-informed citizens. Anyone can be, especially in this time of crisis. Anna, I was not born with a silver spoon in mouth, so there is nothing I can't do to survive the situation I am in at present. Andy, likewise, we both grew up and raised in love, faith, patience, and perseverance. We blank strong. Anna, I blank that we blank to keep going to survive this pandemic. Andy, our government and all of us blank complacent in trying time like this. Anna, though we have our government to support us during this critical time, we blank completely dependent on our government. Andy, yes, you said it right. We blank resourceful and frugal at times like this. Anna, I blank that we blank planting vegetables in our own backyard or in any improvised plant box. Andy, that's a good idea. Anna, we as responsible citizens blank also blank our government surpass this trying time. Anna, not only that, we blank compliant to the rules directed by our government to get rid of this pandemic the soonest possible time. Andy, yeah, I got it right. Let's go check what we blank and blank while under enhanced community quarantine. Anna, that is what we blank in times of crisis. We blank of this pandemic in no time at all if we will cooperate. Andy, come on, friend, we can make a difference. Okay? So only the last answer, number 15, I'm going to provide. So that's the tip there, that's the clue. You have to provide a verb phrase for each blank having their modal verb and main verb. The main verb should be suited in the idea that is being talked about in each sentence for you to fully complete or for you to fill in the blank spaces in the once upon a pandemic. Okay? So let's proceed. After accomplishing the challenging learning task 4, now let us proceed to learning task 5. Using the infographic below from the World Health Organization, convert it into a dialogue between two members of a family using phrases or modals plus verbs expressing permission, obligation, or prohibition. So we have here the infographic from the World Health Organization. Home care for people with suspected or confirmed COVID-19. Take care of yourself and your family. All members of the household wash hands with soap and water regularly, specifically after coughing, before, during, and after preparing food, before eating, after using toilet, before and after caring for the ill person, when hands are visibly exposed. Avoid unnecessary exposure to the ill person and avoid sharing items such as eating utensils, dishes, drinks, and towels. When coughing or sneezing, cover mouth and nose with flexed elbow or use a disposable tissue and discard immediately after use. Monitor everyone's health for symptoms such as fever, cough, and if difficult breathing appear, call your healthcare facility immediately. So how are you going to accomplish learning task 5? You can follow the structure of the conversation between Anna and Andy under learning task 4. You just need to formulate or to write 10 sentences, not formulate, write, compose 10 dialogues, okay? So you have a certain member of the family, then you, then exchange dialogues using the given infographics, and do not forget to make use of modals plus verbs expressing permission, obligation, or prohibition. Of course, the content has something to do with the infographics, okay? So I hope it's clear on how are you going to do it. Just 10 dialogues will do. Do not make it that difficult for you, okay? Just see to it that you will be using modal verbs expressing permission, obligation, or prohibition, incorporated with the ideas that can be found or that you read from this infographic coming from the World Health Organization. Okay. Thank you so much for listening and understanding our lesson for this week, learning task 1 to 5. Expect that we will continue with learning task 6 to 10 by next week. Again, God bless us all and good day.